Once upon a time, in a faraway kingdom nestled between towering mountains and deep, vast forests, there lived a very cruel and unforgiving king. His rules were so strict, so unyielding, that even the slightest mistake, even the smallest act of disobedience, was punished with the harshest of consequences: death. The people in the kingdom lived in constant fear, always walking on eggshells, terrified that one wrong move could lead to their demise. It was a kingdom ruled by fear, and those who lived under its rule knew there was little hope for escape. One fateful day, a man in the kingdom, an ordinary, humble man, accidentally broke one of the king's many rules. Perhaps it was an unintentional mistake or an oversight, but whatever the cause, he was promptly arrested by the king's guards and thrown into a dark, damp cell. His family was left in shock and fear, knowing that their lives would change forever. After a few days, the man was brought before the king, shackled and bound, with no hope of mercy. The cruel king, without a moment of hesitation or remorse, sentenced him to death. The man stood in front of the king, completely shocked and deeply distressed. His heart raced, and his mind was filled with thoughts of his family, his wife and children, who would now have to live without him. Yet, as the weight of the death sentence sank in, something unexpected happened. Instead of begging for mercy or falling to his knees in fear, the man, gathering every ounce of courage, began to laugh. His laughter echoed through the hall, surprising everyone around him. The king and his ministers stared at him, dumbfounded. They had never seen anything like this before. They had seen people crying, begging, lamenting their fate, or threatening to take revenge, but never had anyone laughed in the face of such a dire situation. The king, his eyes narrowed in suspicion, leaned forward and asked, "Why are you laughing? Did you misunderstand my words? I have sentenced you to death, and yet you find this amusing?" The man, still chuckling to himself, wiped away a tear from his eye and replied, "No, my lord, I heard you perfectly. You have sentenced me to death." The king, growing impatient, asked again, "Then why are you laughing at a time like this?" The man, still calm, smiled and said, "My lord, I have a remarkable and unique skill. I can train horses to fly. I had planned to come to your court and show you this incredible talent, but I made a mistake and now face your wrath." I laughed because, in my mind, I realized that with my death, the possibility of you ever seeing a flying horse will vanish forever. The king, intrigued but still unsure of the man's sincerity, turned to his ministers. They whispered among themselves, discussing whether the man was merely trying to save his life with a wild claim. One of the ministers, with a skeptical look, said, "I think he's bluffing, my lord. Have you ever heard of a flying horse? It sounds like a fairy tale." Another minister, who was more open-minded, countered, "Who knows? Just because we have never seen a flying horse doesn't mean it is impossible. There are many things in the world we have yet to discover." The ministers continued to debate, offering various opinions, but the king remained puzzled. Although he was skeptical, the idea of a flying horse intrigued him. He had spent his life ruling with power and fear, but the idea of flying on a horse, a creature that could defy the laws of nature, was something he could not ignore. He turned to the man and asked, "How long will it take you to train a horse to fly?" The man, who had thought carefully about his answer, replied, "My lord, it will take a year. It is not an easy task, but I assure you it is possible." The king, his voice lowering with a threatening tone, said, "And if you fail, you will face a very painful death. Do you understand?" The man, fully aware of the risks, nodded. "I understand, my lord," he said, though his voice remained steady and calm. "But I have some conditions. While I train the horse, no one must disturb or watch us. This is to prevent any of your enemies from learning about my skill and possibly trying to kidnap or kill me. Furthermore, I request that food, clothing, and other necessities be provided for my family so that I may focus entirely on my work without distractions." The king, after some thought, agreed to the terms. He released the man, and the people of the kingdom were left to wonder about his fate. As the man returned home, he found his wife and children in tears. His wife, deeply worried, asked him, "Why did you give the king such false hope?" You know that you can never make a horse fly. You will just die a miserable death after a year. But the man smiled gently and with a glint of hope in his eyes replied, Why do you think that way? Look at what we have gained. I was supposed to die today, but now I have another year to live with you. That is a year we would not have had otherwise. And in that time, there are three possibilities that can happen. He continued, his voice calm yet full of optimism. The first possibility is that I may die of natural causes, like anyone else. The second possibility is that the king, who is growing older, may die in this time, and I would be free. And the third possibility, the one I am holding on to, is that perhaps I may actually learn how to make a horse fly. He paused, smiling at his family. So let us stay hopeful, my dear, and enjoy the time we have together without worrying. Anything is possible. It happened, as fate would have it, that 8 months later, a neighboring kingdom launched an attack on their kingdom. The ensuing battle was fierce, and in the end, the cruel king met his demise. With the king's death, the man no longer had to fulfill his promise of making a horse fly. Now, he was free to live the rest of his life in peace and happiness with his family. If we reflect on this story, we can see that hope is an incredibly powerful force in our lives. The entire world thrives on hope. In times of struggle and uncertainty, it is hope that keeps us going. When we face challenges that seem insurmountable, it is hope that fuels our belief that better days are ahead. Without hope, life can feel like a never-ending night with no dawn. Hope gives us the strength to keep moving forward, to keep fighting, and to wait patiently for better times. Those who lose hope often feel like life is a dark night that has no end. Many people who consider taking drastic steps, such as suicide, do so because they feel that hope has vanished from their lives. But we must remember that time is always in motion. Nothing stays the same forever. Just as night eventually gives way to day, difficult times will eventually pass, and good times will return. In the same way, the man in this story held on to hope for a better future, and, in the end, his circumstances changed for the better. His story reminds us that those who hold on to hope can look forward to a brighter tomorrow. It may take time, but if we do not give up and keep hoping, things can improve. So, whenever life feels heavy and burdensome, never give up hope. Just as night falls and a new day begins, you never know what incredible things the next day might bring. Therefore, stay strong, keep your faith, and always remain hopeful.